2004 T-Bird, 51,000 miles. And this one, I'm having a little problem finding the suction line on it. Probably only done 6 of these because they're such a rare thing that's barely around. There was dye in it already, so when I went to go take off the cap was on really tight, overly tight. Anytime I have an overly tight cap, I know somebody was in there. They complained about the AC not working, sitting a long time. Previous owner just passed away. I'm seeing if it could be filled up so it could be sold. But what I found was, since somebody was so kind to put dye in the system, there we go, I found that right there. Do you see that glow right there? That's what I found. And that could be actually the worst place you ever want to have a leak. So if you look down here, you can see the small metal line. Then you see the suction line has insulation over it because it's, you know, right by the exhaust manifold. Thank God they put insulation over it. And then they both go together underneath that wrapping where it's leaking. And then that wrapping goes all the way up over. See right there where the expansion valve is? How would you like to be the guy who has to change that? And that's where it's leaking. But it might be really small, and we'll find out. I'm gonna fill it up and leak test it and see how big the leak is. If this was like, well, we know it leaked before because somebody put UV dye on it. We don't have the history. We don't know how long ago. Was it 5 years ago, or was it, you know, 6 months ago, just before the fellow died on this one? And so we don't know. Usually on many of these leaks, especially if it's where the rubber goes in and it's rubber to metal and you have oil in there and you draw a vacuum, it can actually close down and seal, and you'll draw a perfect vacuum. It'll never leak, but it leaks under pressure. Or maybe it leaks only at a certain temperature. When the metal gets cold and the metal shrinks, but the rubber around the metal is now hard and crispy, there's no more elasticity to it, the rubber doesn't shrink with the metal, so you end up with a gap. So when it's running in cold, if it's on the suction line, it leaks when it's running in cold. When the pressure goes up and you turn off the car and it heats up and the metal expands it with the oil film and it seals against the rubber, it stops leaking. It could be one of those leaks that only leaks when you're running it. It could be one of those leaks only leaks when you shut it off and the pressure shoots way up. Who knows? But we're gonna find out and see if it's good enough, because that's what's gonna happen on this one at a body shop. And this was the other one I talked about earlier. It's running perfectly. He had a lot of problems due to electrical and disconnecting the battery and stuff like that, but the AC. Now what I like to do, Priuses, all cars. I was taught by my father, when we're going back to the 70s, you always put your hands on the case. Well, we only had four main compressors in the 1960s and 70s, but you know, basically 6 compressors, and that's all we had. There were no more. So what you did was you put your fingers on the compressor. I can't even show you here. And you learn what a properly filled up compressor, when you do it by weight and you do it properly, not by guessing. And you learn the temperature of the case. And different, you touch the back of the case, the front, by the bearing, you touch it by the suction line, you touch the case by the discharge, you go to the back, you go to the underbelly, and you teach your fingers and you teach yourself on every model case, which is nearly impossible to remember now because some of them are inaccessible and there's so many models that it's hard to learn this. But you teach yourself what is a normal temperature of a particular case of a particular compressor operating under particular operating circumstances. And good ones, you compare good ones to bad ones, and you can start noticing differences when there's actually a problem, especially when there's physical problems like bearings and stuff like that. Your charge might be gone, good, but it already ran low a few times. There's some mechanical damage at some bearings. They're running really hot, and you get this really hot spot at the back of the case where the back of the case might have a thrust bearing in it or a bearing in it. And you put your hand back there and you go, damn, I got a really cold suction line, but I've never noticed this part of the case that I touch in the back. It's really hot right here. And it's making a noise and I feel a vibration or a grinding. Well, that tells you right there you have something that's going to fail later. It's not failed yet. There's little metal filings coming off of there, and you're catching it and notating it before you hand it back to the customer. Let yourself know. You wouldn't believe how many faults over the decades I've found just by putting my hand, knowing the previous history, that you can zoom in just with your fingertips touching cases. Okay, I'll see you guys later. I gotta get back to this one. Got a full day today. See ya.